Oh, hello Internet! This is my summary of Truth and Politics, and I have determined this time to keep it shorter than 1/3 the length of the original video, so let's jump right in. As much as Truth and Politics is a very broad and important philosophical topic, this essay was a personal one for Arendt because it was written in the aftermath of the trial of Adolf Eichmann and the way that Arendt reported on it, and the way that her reporting was reported on. Oh, and I need to clarify an error from the main video. I wrongly said that the trial of Eichmann was before Arendt wrote The Origins of Totalitarianism. In fact, it was after, and in fact, Arendt saw the opportunity to go to the trial as a way to get a personal angle on what she had written about in a very dry academic context. But moving on. The controversy that Arendt caused in speaking of the banality of evil is one of the reasons she's overlooked as a thinker even to this day, but no one who takes even a passing look at her true feelings on the matter here can say that she was not authentic and humane in the way that she wrote about this. It is certainly fair to disagree with the perspective that she forwarded, but to say that it was forwarded in bad faith is certainly something done in bad faith. The project of the essay is this. Given the undeniable presence of lies in the political realm, Arendt's goal is to tackle these questions. First and most importantly, is truth even an important thing in the political realm at all? Arendt says yes, and her affirmative answer here prompts the remaining questions. 1. Why have lies been regarded as acceptable in the political realm? 2. What does this fact mean for the dignity of the political realm and the dignity of truth in general? 3. Is it of the very essence of truth to be impotent and the very essence of power to be deceitful? 4. What kind of reality does truth even have if it is powerless in the political realm? And finally, 5. Is impotent truth just as despicable as power that gives no heed to truth? Now, there is obviously an agenda being forwarded through those questions, and these questions are not necessarily the most comprehensive or concise in regard to these matters. However, they do strike at the heart of why this should be a concern to anyone with a passing interest in politics. Arendt calls them uncomfortable questions, and if you don't regard that as a massive understatement, then I think you should go and read them again and reflect a little more, but do tell me if you think I'm wrong about that. The 5 parts of the essay are named by me, although part 4, The Modern Art of Self-Deception, is taken directly from the text. Moving on to part 1, this is where Arendt lays out that she believes the truth is deeply important in the political realm and what its nature is. Ultimately, she says, truth is important because it is impossible for the world to develop productively based on falsehoods. Because in the end, the falseness and insufficiency of the given explanations will lead to inconsistencies in the system. And the system we're talking about here is literally the functioning of the entire human world. So thus, Arendt makes her claim that the long-term prosperity of the human world is dependent on the central importance of that which simply is because it happens to be thus and not otherwise. While not perhaps unassailable, I think this is a fairly strong assertion of why the truth should be important in the development of the world as an ongoing system. Arendt continues with the model by saying that there are types of truth that exist, and here she, by her own admission, is on much less firm territory. She discusses contrasts between Hobbes and Plato, and she presents a distinction between rational truth and factual truth, the former being truths which are worked out by philosophical effort, and the latter being the brute facts of what absolutely occurred. This distinction broadly holds up, but it does seem likely that different truths and types of truths will interact differently in the public space in different ways, and so the absolute distinction between rational and factual truth is unlikely to tell the whole story here. For this essay, however, Arendt says it will suffice. In part 2, Arendt starts to unpack the tension that underlies the topic. Philosophers and intellectual pursuits in general do not consider mere facts to be especially convincing because they are inherently anecdotal and thus they can only fit a pattern. They can never define the pattern. But this is not the way that any human being, including those same philosophers and intellectuals, live their everyday life. Largely by the nature of our psychology and our personal biases of experience, we all form our personal identities from our opinions, which are informed mostly by our interpretation of factual truths as we see them. Furthermore, because the nature of politics itself is the exchange of opinions and the consensus that forms around them, in the last analysis it will be factual truth and not rational truth that has the greatest influence on the public realm. And through the proliferation of an opinion through the population, the worldview of the masses develops. The masses here refers to any given population or a relevant subset of that population, although we can of course agree that every individual human may have a subtly different viewpoint. It is only the ability of a group to conceive of itself as a mass, however, that gives it any identity at all, and only something that can be identified as an agent can wield political power. Through this mechanism, the acceptance of a particular set of truths can become fundamental to the self-conception of whole sections of society, and therefore any factual truths which contradict this set can become the target of extreme hostility. This is the conflict that can exist between truth and power in the public space, and Arendt says it makes truth extremely vulnerable to attacks by organised power groups. Factual truth especially, because although a rational truth could emerge again if someone has that idea, a factual truth, an event that actually occurred at a certain point in time, can be truly expunged from history if lies are spread widely enough. A lost fact is lost forever. Opening part 3, Arendt points out that truth is quite frustrating sometimes because it essentially demands to be acknowledged. You can decide for yourself that 1 + 1 = 3 or something like that if you want, but good luck building that into a functional worldview. The truth of the matter will enforce itself upon you. A mathematically compelling example like this shows most starkly how this works, but the same is essentially true of any kind of truth if it is actually a truth. This makes truth uncomfortable and potentially antagonistic to every person, but in particular for political actors, for contrasting reasons. The truth is uncomfortable to authoritarians because they despise the opposition to their power, and Democrats dislike the strong coercion that is implied here. Truth is always ready to mock our most cherished political principles. If we are to claim that truth, especially factual truth, is important at all, then we must ask whether the scope of political decisions should be obstructed by the truth, and whether this therefore is actively anti-political because it precludes all possible discussion. I think Arendt says that there has to be some impact on the political realm, but it need not destroy political freedom at all. And one of the reasons Arendt gives for this is that the proper use of political freedom in the modern mass context is to consider a broad range of perspectives in one's own decision making, and therefore valuing the truth is no obstacle, but really a valuable information gathering faculty. However, humans will still find a way to denigrate a truth that goes against their own worldview, and clearly they can do this because to very clearly analyse the nature of facts is actually hard to do, and again, even harder in the case of factual truths because of contingency. The contingency of factual things, the melancholy haphazardness of the world, is why almost any opinion can take hold in spite of what the truth actually says. Opinion holders can simply choose to believe that what happened in reality didn't really happen. The truth, where it becomes inconvenient, is very easily dismissed, and this demonstrates once again that there is no way to invoke the potency of rational compulsion in the political space, nor to use the facts of what happened in such a compelling way. In part 4, Arendt turns her ire on the modern form of political lies, but in doing so she reveals just how dire the situation has become. In the modern lie, its intention is not to hide, but to destroy factual truths, and in this pursuit it is necessary that the liars deceive even themselves. Arendt does not clarify exactly when this tendency began to dominate in the political realm, but by implication we can see that it was over the course of the 20th century, when the world wars exposed some of the greatest ideological schisms, and the advent of mass advertising began to manipulate human psychology in ways that we did not, and still only barely, understand. Whatever the source of the problem, its political import is clear and only becoming clearer. To distinguish them clearly, traditional political lies were the exercise of political power through falsehood. Modern political lies are created with the purpose of seizing political power entirely on the basis of falsehood. It is potentially this modern kind of lie which has led to the advent of totalitarianism, in which the leaders of the cult, those who create the propaganda, will fabricate ever more and more fanciful substitutes for the factual nature of reality, and they will use those very lies as a shield against reality. A shield that is held up by the various layers of the cult, the complicit, the sycophants, the misled, and the unwary members who ultimately submit their thought processes to the ideology that has become an icon. Naming part 5, as I have done, from truth into legend, is rather pretentious, but deliberately so, because metaphorically this is exactly what is happening. The rendering of factual truth into opinion, the writers who create the narratives that do this, is creating the first draft of history, and so legend begins to be laid down. But I do get ahead of myself. The mechanism that leads to this is through the universities, which Arendt claims are that external space, outside the political realm, where truth is permitted to become established before it is thrown into the political fray to become the subject of opinions. Arendt mentions the judiciary in passing, and we might also speculate on ways in which the administration of justice creates the nature of the world. However, it is primarily the writers and reporters who Arendt discusses here. Given the context for this essay being written, this is reasonable. These narrative crafters are charged with placing themselves outside the world itself, so they may properly interpret that which is. As I mentioned in the main video, Arendt is open to the accusation of rather self-congratulatory rhetoric here, which is inescapably true. In effect, she is defending herself by saying, look, I understand why it isn't possible for you to see how I'm right about this. I exaggerate a little, but the implication is kind of there. But more charitably, Arendt is simply expressing that she does not feel that she has anything that she needs to apologize for, and that while people may disagree with her, to lie about what she is saying strikes her as problematic and distasteful. Having started the essay by stating unambiguously that the truth as an idea is crucial for humanity, Arendt has finished by presenting the place that that mechanism whereby truth emerges and demonstrates its importance takes place. The final line of the essay could not be clearer in stating that, metaphorically, truth is the ground upon which we walk and the sky that stretches above us. Bye for now.